December 21st, 7:47 p.m. I was sitting at my desk, grinding through the quarterly end-of-year reports, when my phone buzzed. The office was dead silent. Most of my coworkers had already left for Christmas break, and the humming fluorescent lights above felt like a clock ticking down every single second of my shift. I glanced at the screen. It was a text from my older sister, Victoria. "Porch. We're not doing Christmas with you this year." Before I could even process it, a second text popped up. "We don't need you." I stared at those words twice, not out of shock, but because I'd been waiting for this exact moment for 3 months. I set my pen down, looked at the screen again, and smiled. It wasn't a bitter smile. It was a genuine, overwhelming sense of relief. Porch. Then I typed back a single word. "Cool." My thumb hovered over the send button for 2 seconds, and I added one last sentence. "In that case, my financial obligations to this family end today. My attorney has been notified." I hit send and flipped my phone face down on the desk. Victoria thought she was punishing me. Porch. She thought I'd cry, call her back, and beg for forgiveness like I always used to. What she didn't know was that I had put something in motion 3 months ago. And she certainly had no idea what was coming for her in the next 24 hours. My name is Hannah Brooks. I'm 34 years old, and I work as a senior accountant at a real estate investment firm in downtown Denver. Porch. I live alone in a modest one-bedroom apartment in Capitol Hill. I have a good job, a reliable car, and a savings account I built dollar by dollar over the last decade. On paper, I was the absolute definition of responsible. But to my family, I was something else entirely. I was the emergency fund, the credit buffer, and the invisible investor behind everyone else's American dream. Porch. For 10 years, whenever something went wrong, I was the one who got the call. When our parents couldn't make their mortgage payments, I sent $400 a month to keep a roof over their heads. When Victoria maxed out her credit cards, I covered her bills until she got back on her feet. When the whole family wanted to go to Cancun, I paid the deposits. Money that somehow never got reimbursed. Porch. And when Victoria needed a cosigner for a car because her credit score was temporarily wrecked, I signed my name on the dotted line without asking a single question. I did all of it because I believed that's what family meant. Sacrifice, support, and stepping up when you're needed, even when it costs you. But what I refused to see back then was that the support only flowed one way. Porch. I gave and they took. At some point down the line, they stopped seeing me as a person and started viewing me as a resource. Victoria is 4 years older than me. She has a husband named Marcus, 2 young daughters, Lily and Emma, and a beautiful home in Boulder, a place the whole family bragged she bought all on her own. Porch. Our parents, Richard and Patricia Brooks, always treated her like the sun, and the rest of us were just orbiting around her. Victoria got all the praise, all the attention, and unconditional forgiveness whenever she messed up. And me? I only got midnight calls asking if I could solve yet another family emergency. Porch. 3 months before that text arrived, I discovered something that changed everything. At the time, I was preparing to buy my first home. After years of saving, I finally had enough for a down payment on a small condo. I pulled my credit report, fully expecting to see the flawless financial history I'd worked so hard to build. Instead, I found an absolute nightmare. Porch. There was a $47,000 personal loan under my name, a loan I had never applied for, and it was 63 days overdue. The address on the account was listed as my parents' house in Boulder, and the cosigner listed on the loan was Victoria Marie Brooks Callahan. I stared at the screen until my eyes burned. $47,000. Someone had stolen my identity and taken out a massive loan without my knowledge. Porch. My first instinct was to call the police, but my second instinct was worse, because a memory suddenly flashed in my head. 2 years ago, Victoria asked to borrow my driver's license and original Social Security card. She claimed her insurance company needed to verify beneficiary information. Porch. She told me she was naming me as the beneficiary on her life insurance policy, and that it was just a routine formality. Back then, I was actually touched. I thought she truly cared about me. I handed my documents over without hesitation. There was no life insurance. There never was. My own sister used my identity to steal $47,000, and my parents' address was printed right on all the documents. Orch. There was no way they didn't know. The bank notices went to their house. The monthly statements went to their house. For 2 full years, they watched my credit get ruined and never said a single word to me. I didn't confront them right away. Instead, I did what I do best. I started gathering evidence. Orch. I requested official documents from the bank and pulled full credit reports from all 3 major bureaus, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. That's when I uncovered 2 more accounts I had never opened, a retail store card with a $6,200 balance and a $14,300 line of credit. Both were overdue, and both were registered to my parents' address. The total damage was nearly $85,000. Orch. In that exact moment, I decided I was done being this family's doormat. I hired an attorney named Daniel Reyes, started building a bulletproof file, and waited for the perfect time to strike. For 3 whole months, I kept playing the role of the good daughter and reliable sister. I went to family dinners. I smiled and listened while Victoria bragged about her kitchen renovations, and I stayed silent when my mother talked about how proud she was of everything Victoria had achieved. All the while, I was counting down the days. So when Victoria sent that text, it wasn't a shock. It was a gift. She handed me the ultimate excuse to drop the act. And my reply about my lawyer wasn't a bluff. It was a promise. My phone started ringing uncontrollably, almost immediately. First Victoria, then my mother, then my father, and then Victoria again. I let every single call go straight to voicemail. I finished my quarterly report, saved the files, and shut down my computer. I packed up my things, walked to the parking garage, and drove home. The Denver streets were glowing with Christmas lights. My phone kept buzzing on the passenger seat, but I didn't glance at it once. By the time I walked into my apartment, I had 23 missed calls and 47 text messages. I scrolled past all of them until I found the name I was looking for, Daniel Reyes, my attorney. He had sent a message earlier that day. Everything is ready on our end. Just give the word. I replied with 4 words. The word is given. I poured myself a glass of red wine, sat on the couch, and did something I hadn't done in years. I didn't answer their calls. I didn't apologize for existing. I didn't beg for their approval. I just sat there quietly in my apartment, watching the snow fall outside, waiting for the storm to hit them. They thought they didn't need me. They were about to find out just how wrong they were. To understand what happened next, you need to know how this all began 3 months earlier. It started with a simple goal, a standard part of the American dream. I wanted to buy a home of my own. September 15th was the day my trust in my family completely collapsed. I remember sitting at my small dining table after work, laptop open, next to a glass of ice water. It was a warm Denver evening, and I had the window open to catch the breeze. I was excited. After years of careful saving, sticking to a tight budget, saying no to vacations and new cars, and skipping the luxuries my sister seemed to get effortlessly, I was finally ready to put a down payment on a condo in the Highlands. It wasn't a mansion, just a bright little place with a view of the Rocky Mountains that would be entirely mine. The first step was pulling my credit report, the standard procedure before applying for a mortgage. I expected a clean record. I'd never made a late payment in my life. I had one credit card that I paid off in full every month, and my student loans were completely paid off. My credit score should have been around 780, maybe higher. The page loaded. I looked at the number, and my stomach dropped. That couldn't be right. I scrolled down looking for an error, a system glitch, or anything reasonable to explain it. Then I saw it. A personal loan for $47,000. Opened October 2022. Lender, Mountain West Credit Union. Status, 63 days past due. The listed address was 4847 Pinewood Drive, Boulder, Colorado. My parents' house. a place I hadn't lived in since I was 18. Porch. I stared at the screen until my vision blurred. $47,000. A loan I never took out. An address I hadn't called home in 16 years. My initial thought was identity theft by a stranger. Someone had stolen my information and taken out a loan. It happens all the time. I could file a police report, dispute the fraudulent account, and clear it up. Then I saw the cosigner field. Victoria Marie Callahan. Porch. My sister's married name, sitting right there on a loan agreement I had never seen, signed, or agreed to. The room felt like it was spinning. I pressed my hands flat against the table to steady myself. There had to be a mistake. Victoria would never do something like this to her own sister. But as I thought that, a memory hit me. October 2022. 2 years ago. Porch. Victoria had called me late one night, her voice unusually soft. She said she needed a small favor. Her insurance provider needed to verify beneficiary information. She claimed she was adding me as a beneficiary on her life insurance policy and needed copies of my ID to confirm everything legally. Just routine paperwork, she'd said. Nothing to worry about. I remember feeling touched. Porch. Victoria rarely showed that kind of thoughtfulness toward me. The idea that she was naming me on her policy made me feel, for the first time, like she actually cared. That I was more than just a backup plan when she needed cash. That weekend, I drove over to her house and handed her my driver's license and social security card. While she copied them, I played with my niece Lily in the living room. Porch. A week later, I forgot all about it. There was no life insurance policy. There never was. Sitting at my kitchen table, looking at the report that proved my sister had forged my signature, it hit me. She hadn't borrowed my identity for paperwork. She'd used it to take $47,000. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there as a cold realization settled into my chest. The death of trust is quiet. Porch. It doesn't come with dramatic scenes or tears. It just vanishes, leaving a void where belief used to be. The next morning, I called Mountain West Credit Union. I kept my voice steady and explained that I hadn't opened the account and needed copies of the documents. The customer service agent was polite and apologized, clearly trained for these situations. Porch. She told me she would mail full copies of the loan file within 5 to 7 business days. Then she said something that confirmed my worst fears. "Ma'am, my system shows there is a cosigner on this account named Victoria Callahan. Do you know this person?" I nearly dropped the phone. "Yes," I said. "That's my sister." The documents arrived on September 22nd. Porch. I stared at the envelope for 10 full minutes before gathering the courage to open it. Inside was proof of how deep the betrayal ran. The application listed all my correct personal details. My social security number, date of birth, employer, and annual income. Porch. The purpose of the loan was marked as home improvement and debt consolidation. All notices were addressed to my parents' house in Boulder. The phone number on file was Victoria's mobile line, and while the email address included my name, it was an account I had never created. Then came the signature page. My name was signed in handwriting that looked like mine, but slightly off. Porch. The loops on the letters were wrong, and the slant was a few degrees off. It was a careful forgery, but a forgery nonetheless. I held it side by side with my actual signature on my driver's license. Anyone looking closely could tell the difference. Porch. Victoria hadn't just stolen my identity. She had created a shadow version of me. A version that lived at my parents' house and apparently needed $47,000 for home improvements. Home improvements on a property I didn't even own. I photographed every page and backed them up to a secure cloud drive. Then I did something that surprised even myself. I didn't call Victoria. I didn't confront her. Porch. I didn't give her a chance to lie to my face. Instead, I requested complete credit reports from all 3 major bureaus. If there was one fraudulent account, there could be more. Before making a move, I needed to know the full extent of what had been done. 2 days later, I found a second account. A J.C. Penney store card opened in March 2023 with an $8,000 limit. Porch. The balance sat at $6,200, and it was 90 days past due. Every shipping address for the purchases pointed straight to Victoria's house in Boulder. 3 days after that, a third account surfaced, a $15,000 line of credit with Homestead Financial Services, opened in January 2024, just 8 months earlier. The balance was $14,300, and it had been turned over to collections. I pulled out a notepad and started adding up the numbers, my hand shaking slightly as I wrote: personal loan, $47,000 store card, $6,200 line of credit, $14,300 late fees and interest, roughly $17,000 total damage, $84,500. My own sister had stolen $84,500 using my name, and my parents' address was attached to every single one of those accounts. The statements went to their house. The collection notices went to their house. For 2 years they watched it happen and said nothing to me. They knew. There was no way they didn't. I sat there processing the grim reality. The sister I had repeatedly bailed out of financial trouble, and the parents who relied on my monthly housing assistance to get by. They had looked me in the eye at every family dinner, accepted my help, praised Victoria's achievements, and never once mentioned that they were complicit in ruining my financial future. I could have gone to the police right then. What Victoria did amounted to severe offenses under state and federal law: identity theft, forgery, and financial fraud. She was looking at serious legal consequences, but I held off, not to protect her, but because I knew my family too well. I knew how they operated. If I confronted them then, they would deny it, gaslight me, and turn me into the villain. Victoria would cry, my mother would take her side, my father would claim I was overreacting, and somehow I'd end up being the one expected to apologize. I'd seen that play out too many times. I knew how it ended. So I chose a different path. I was going to gather evidence, map out the entire scope of what they had done, and consult an attorney to see exactly where I stood. The following week, I met with Daniel Reyes, and what he uncovered made that $84,000 look like pocket change. Because Victoria hadn't just used my credit, she had compromised our parents' financial standing too, and the house they thought they owned, the one I had helped pay for over 5 years, was no longer truly theirs. They just didn't know it yet. Daniel Reyes's office was on the 14th floor of a downtown Denver high-rise. Diplomas covered the walls, and the shelves were lined with heavy legal texts on financial crimes. He was in his mid-40s, a former prosecutor with a sharp, calm demeanor, known for being incredibly thorough. A colleague who had gone through a messy divorce recommended him to me, saying he handled complex situations where family and money were tangled up. On September 27th, I walked into his office carrying a thick folder containing everything I had gathered: credit reports, forged loan documents, screenshots of Victoria asking for my documents, and bank statements for accounts I never opened. I laid them out across his conference table like evidence at a crime scene. In a way, that's exactly what they were. Daniel reviewed each document in silence, taking notes on a legal pad without interrupting. When he finished, he set his pen down and looked at me. "Miss Brooks, what your sister did constitutes serious financial crimes: identity theft, forgery, and bank fraud. If you file a formal complaint today, an investigation would begin immediately." I knew what that meant, but hearing it stated so plainly made my chest tighten. "I understand," I said. "But before I make any decisions, I need to see the entire picture." He nodded slowly. "That's the smart way to handle it," he said. "Let's walk through your options." He explained that I had 4 paths forward. The first was formal legal action. I could report the fraud, which would clear my credit records through fraud affidavits and protect me as a victim. The downside was obvious. My sister would face severe legal consequences. My nieces' lives would be turned upside down, and the family dynamic would be completely destroyed in a very public way. The second was a civil lawsuit. I could sue Victoria directly for full restitution and damages. That would force her to account for her actions legally. However, civil proceedings are long and expensive, and if she lacked liquid assets, recovering the funds might prove difficult. The third was a negotiated settlement. Which I could present the evidence privately and demand a formal repayment agreement without involving the courts or police. The glaring flaw there was that it depended entirely on Victoria's cooperation. Trusting someone who had systematically defrauded her own sister to honor an informal agreement was unrealistic. The fourth option, which Daniel called the long game, was to gather complete intelligence before acting. I would map out the full scope of the fraud, build an airtight file, and make my move from a position of absolute information advantage rather than emotion. "I'm taking option 4, I said without hesitation. "I want to know everything." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Most people in your position want to react immediately." "Most people haven't spent 34 years learning how my family operates," I replied. "If I move too fast, they'll find a way to make this my fault. Before I face them, I need to know exactly what I'm up against." He leaned back and evaluated me for a moment, then nodded. "All right. Let's see what else we can dig up." Over the next 2 weeks, Daniel conducted an investigation I couldn't have managed on my own. He obtained additional records and traced the flow of funds through each fraudulent account. What he uncovered was far worse than I had imagined. The $47,000 personal loan from Mountain West Credit Union had been split into 3 transactions. $23,000 went straight into Victoria's personal checking account. $9,000 was withdrawn in cash across different branches, and $15,000 was issued as a cashier's check to Boulder County Title Company. Daniel cross-referenced that payment with public property records. That $15,000 had been used as part of the down payment on a home purchase in Boulder. Victoria's house. The very house the family praised her for buying on her own. The house where she hosted Thanksgiving dinners and Christmas parties. The house for which I had given her a $5,000 housewarming gift to support her. "Your sister used your stolen identity to buy her dream home," Daniel said. "And then she had the nerve to ask you for more money at her housewarming party." I remembered that day clearly. Victoria had looked at my check and said, "Is this it? I thought you'd help cover the landscaping too." I had felt guilty at the time for not giving more. Now I understood her entitlement. In her mind, she had already secured what she needed, and my gift was just extra padding. The J.C. Penny account told a similar story. $6,000 spent over 18 months on furniture, appliances, and home decor, all delivered to Victoria's address. The purchase dates matched photos she had posted on social media showing off her new living room set, upgraded kitchen, and remodeled bedrooms for her daughters. But Daniel wasn't finished yet. "There's one more thing we need to discuss," he said. "About your parents." My stomach tightened instantly. "What about them?" He pulled another file from his drawer. "All 3 fraudulent accounts listed their address as your residence. Someone had to receive that mail. Someone had to intercept the bank statements and collection notices. The personal loan even required proof of residence, and someone provided a utility bill with your name on it." I wanted to push back. I wanted to believe my parents were fooled just like I was. But the paper trail didn't support that fantasy. They allowed Victoria to use their address. They watched statements in my name arrive month after month, watched my credit get ruined, and said absolutely nothing. Daniel watched my face as I processed the reality. "Either your parents were actively involved in the fraud," he said quietly, "or they turned a blind eye. Neither option reflects well on them." An uninvited memory surfaced. Thanksgiving 2022, about a month after that first loan was opened. We were all gathered at my parents' house in Boulder. Victoria and Marcus had brought the girls, and I had brought a homemade pie and 2 bottles of wine. Dinner was its usual chaotic mix of passing dishes and talking over one another. At one point, my mother said something I hadn't thought twice about back then, but now, it sounded crystal clear. Victoria has finally gotten her finances together. She's been so responsible lately. My father had nodded in agreement. Sometimes people just need a little boost to get back on their feet. I assumed they meant emotional support, encouragement, or the vague sense of parental pride that doesn't cost a dime. But they knew about the money. They just didn't know, or care, where it had actually come from. Daniel's voice pulled me back to the present. Without further proof, I can't establish criminal liability for your parents. But I can tell you this, they created the environment that made it possible. They received mail that wasn't theirs, watched your sister spend money she didn't earn, and asked zero questions. In my experience, that isn't ignorance. That's complicity. We spent the rest of the meeting building a strategy. Daniel advised me to keep making the minimum payments on the fraudulent accounts to prevent them from going into active collections. That would trigger calls and alert Victoria before we were ready. From that moment on, I had to document every family interaction, save every text message, and record every conversation. Most importantly, I couldn't let on that I knew a thing. You want me to keep playing along? I asked. He nodded. I want you to protect yourself by letting them think they've won. It's the hardest part, but it's the smartest move on the board. So that's exactly what I did. For the next month, I attended family dinners at my parents' house like nothing was wrong. When Victoria talked about her kitchen renovation plans, I smiled. When my mother praised Victoria's taste in interior design, I listened politely. When the adults discussed holiday plans, I played with Lily and Emma in the backyard. All the while, I was watching, waiting, and gathering evidence. They had no idea. They looked at me and saw the same quiet, reliable, easily overlooked Hannah. They didn't see the evidence file growing thicker on my kitchen counter. They didn't see the emails back and forth with my lawyer, and they didn't see the woman I was becoming, someone who would no longer accept betrayal as the price of belonging to this family. On October 25th, my mother called with a specific request. We've decided to do Christmas a little differently this year, she said. Victoria is going to host at her new place. It's time she takes on more responsibility. Then she got to the real point. But we need you to help cover the costs. Victoria's mortgage is quite a strain right now, so could you take care of the catering and maybe buy the gifts for the girls? She was asking for roughly $3,000 for a Christmas celebration held in a house partially bought with money stolen from me, hosted by the very sister who had defrauded me. I told her I'd check my budget and get back to her, then hung up and stared at the wall for a long time. They wanted me to fund a party in a home built on my stolen credit. In that moment, I realized something fundamental. Victoria's greed wasn't the disease itself. It was just a symptom. The real issue was that my family was completely incapable of seeing me as anything other than a resource to be extracted. But what truly shattered whatever was left inside me happened at a family dinner a week later. My mother said 7 words at that table. 7 words I will never forget. 7 words that made me realize I had been invisible to them my entire life, and cemented my resolve to make sure they finally, permanently, and unforgettable saw who I was. Which brings us back to tonight, December 21st. I sat on my couch, sipping a second glass of red wine, looking at the mountain of notifications piling up on my phone. It was 9:30 p.m., and my family had been frantically trying to reach me for the last 2 hours. That thick evidence folder sat on my coffee table, filled with pages that documented their betrayal. Outside, Denver was glowing with holiday lights. Inside my apartment, I finally allowed myself to read what they had sent. Victoria's first text came in at 7:53 p.m., just 6 minutes after I sent my reply mentioning my lawyer. "What do you mean, attorney? What attorney? Call me back right now." The all caps made me chuckle. Victoria always defaulted to screaming whenever she felt like she was losing control. My mother texted at 7:58 p.m. "Hannah Marie Brooks, call your sister back this instant. We did not raise you to act like this. She used my full name just like she did when I disappointed her as a child, which happened a lot. My father's message arrived at 8:12 p.m. The fact that he texted at all showed how serious they thought the situation was. Orch. Richard Brooks almost never texted. He barely knew how to operate his smartphone. Your mother is very upset. Whatever this is about, we can talk about it like adults. Call the house. Then Victoria sent another one at 8:34 p.m. You are being completely ridiculous. We were going to invite you eventually anyway. Stop making a dramatic scene out of nothing. Orch. I read that phrase 3 times. We were going to invite you eventually anyway. As if I were an afterthought. As if allowing me to attend Christmas was a charitable concession they were granting me, provided I behaved myself. Next, I opened my voicemail. There were 4 messages. The first was from Victoria at 8:02 p.m. Her voice was sharp and aggressive. Orch. Hannah, I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but it's not funny. You can't just threaten to cut off financial support. We have arrangements in place. Call me back. I paused on that word. Arrangements. Not agreements, not your generous help. Arrangements, as if I were a utilities service she had subscribed to without my consent. Orch. The second message was my mother at 8:15 p.m., her tone wounded and dramatic. Hannah, after everything your father and I have done for you, this is how you treat this family? We are heartbroken. Victoria is beside herself. She was so looking forward to hosting Christmas. Please don't ruin this for everyone. Orch. I listened to that message twice, trying to recall a single specific thing they had done for me. I couldn't think of one. The third was Victoria again at 8:47 p.m. Her tone had shifted, softer now, but far more calculated. Look, I'm sorry if my earlier text came off harsh. I'm just stressed out with all the party planning. Of course we want you there. Can we please just talk? A non-apology. Orch. Sorry if my text came off harsh, not sorry for what I said. Typical. The fourth message was my father at 9:15 p.m., his voice firm and authoritarian. The tone he always used when he wanted an argument to end. Hannah, your mother has a migraine from all this stress. Whatever point you were trying to make, you've made it. Orch. Now be reasonable, call us back, and let's get this sorted out before Christmas. Be reasonable. 2 words they had used my whole life to shut me down. I put my phone down and closed my eyes. The messages weren't surprising. I'd heard variations of them for 34 years. Orch. But there was a single moment that changed everything. A single sentence that forced me to accept what I had spent decades trying to ignore. November 2nd. Just 7 weeks before Victoria sent that text. We were having dinner at my parents' house in Boulder. Orch. Everyone was there. My father Richard at the head of the table, my mother Patricia directing the conversation. Victoria and Marcus with their daughters Lily and Emma squirming in their seats, and me sitting in my usual spot near the kitchen, ready to jump up and grab whatever anyone needed. Dinner followed the familiar pattern. Orch. Victoria dominated the room, talking about her home renovations, bragging about her daughter's school performance, and mentioning Marcus's promotion at work. My parents listened intently, nodding and asking for details. At one point, I mentioned that I was thinking about buying a small condo. A brief silence fell over the table. Orch. My mother offered a flat. That's nice, dear. And immediately turned back to Victoria to ask about her kitchen backsplash plans. After dinner, I helped my mother clear the table. Victoria stayed in the living room with my father and Marcus while I scraped plates and loaded the dishwasher. Through the doorway, I could hear them laughing together. Orch. My mother stood next to me, wiping dishes and humming softly. Then she said it. Victoria really is the heart of this family. I kept washing, my hands submerged in the soapy water. She's just always been special. You understand that, right, Hannah? You're reliable, but Victoria, she just lights up every room she walks into. Orch. I waited for her to add something about me, any small acknowledgement of my worth beyond being reliable. But she just kept drying dishes, completely content with her assessment. Then those 7 words slipped out. We are so lucky to have her, not lucky to have you both. Just her. Only her. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. Porch. I dried the last plate, told my mother I needed to leave early for a morning meeting, and drove back to Denver, in silence. No radio, no phone calls. Just the dark highway and the heavy weight of 34 years settling onto my chest. Porch. That night, I sat in my car outside my apartment building for 45 minutes, thinking about how hard I had fought my entire life to earn what Victoria received without even asking. It was a pattern that ran through my whole life, one I had simply refused to see clearly. When we were kids, Victoria got dance lessons, gymnastics, and summer camps. Porch. I got explanations. We can't afford it for both of you. You understand, right, Hannah? Victoria needs an emotional outlet. She got the bedroom overlooking the garden. I got the smaller room facing the neighbor's fence. When we were teenagers, Victoria's Sweet 16 was a 40-guest party with a DJ. Mine was a dinner at home with a card containing a $20 bill. Porch. When Victoria snuck out at 17 and got caught, she was grounded for a week. When I got a B+ in math, I was lectured for an hour about wasting my potential. When college came around, my parents paid Victoria's full tuition at a state university, along with 4 years of room and board. Porch. When my turn came, they sat me down and explained that money was tight after paying for Victoria, and I'd need to take out student loans. I worked 2 jobs while keeping a 3.8 GPA. Victoria dropped out after 2 years to find herself, and no one ever mentioned the wasted tuition that was never paid back. Porch. When Victoria got married, my parents spent $40,000 on a 200-guest destination wedding in Sedona. Years later, when I asked if they'd help me out if I ever got married, my mother laughed. Oh dear, let's wait until you actually find someone. As if being single was proof of my failure rather than a personal choice. Porch. When Victoria announced her first pregnancy, my mother threw her a lavish baby shower with 50 guests and mountains of gifts. When I passed my CPA exams after years of intense study, I got a single text message, "Congrats." Not even an exclamation point. The excuses were always the same. Victoria needed more support. Victoria was sensitive. Victoria was going through a hard time. Porch. And you, Hannah, you're so strong. You don't need us the way she does. Strong was never a compliment. It was just their license to ignore me. While I was lost in those memories, my phone buzzed with a different kind of notification. Not a text, not a call, but a security alert from my bank. Security alert. Unusual login attempt. Someone tried to access your checking account online. Porch. The attempt originated from Boulder, Colorado. The IP address didn't match any of my devices. Status: failed. Incorrect password. My blood ran cold. I logged into my banking app and checked the security log. Over the last hour, there had been 3 failed login attempts, one for checking, one for savings, and one for my investment account, all from the same Boulder IP address. Porch. All failed because I had updated my passwords and security questions the week before. I checked the timeline. Victoria sent that text at 7:47 p.m. I replied about my lawyer at 7:48 p.m. The first unauthorized login attempt happened at 8:23 p.m., just 35 minutes after I refused to play along. They weren't just panicking over losing my financial support. Porch. Someone was actively trying to break into my bank accounts. Victoria's text wasn't just cruel, it was a distraction. While they assumed I'd be crying and begging for forgiveness, someone was attempting to drain my funds. I immediately called the bank's fraud line, reported the unauthorized access, and requested a security freeze on all my accounts. Porch. The agent confirmed no funds had been moved and all attempts had been blocked. I sat in my dark living room, phone in hand, as the holiday lights outside cast colorful shadows across the walls. For 3 months, I had been building a case, gathering evidence, and waiting for the right moment. And Victoria had just handed it to me. I opened my laptop and drafted an email to Daniel Reyes. Porch. Subject: Phase 2. Ready to proceed. I laid out Victoria's text, my response, and the attempted bank logins. I told him I was done waiting and wanted to move forward with every action we had discussed. His reply came in at 11:02 p.m. I was just about to email you. I found something regarding that property transfer. It's worse than we thought. Come to my office at 8 a.m. tomorrow. George. Bring everything. I stared at those words. Worse than we thought. I couldn't imagine what could be worse than $84,000 in fraudulent debt and a family that treated me like a cash machine. But I was about to learn that Victoria's identity theft wasn't the climax of this story. It was just the opening act. George. When I arrived at 8:15 the next morning, Daniel was already at his desk, morning sunlight cutting sharp lines across the room. A file sat in front of him that I hadn't seen before. He skipped the pleasantries. Before we discuss next steps, you need to see what I found. He slid the folder across the table. The label read, Brooks Property, Boulder County Public Records. George. I opened it, my hands steadier than I expected. Inside were property records, mortgage documents, and a copy of what looked like a title transfer agreement. Your parents' house, Daniel said. 4847 Pinewood Drive, the house you've been contributing mortgage payments toward for 5 years. I nodded, my stomach tightening. 6 months ago, the title was transferred. George. Your parents no longer own that house. I looked up at him. What? Transferred to who? Victoria Marie Brooks Callahan. I couldn't process the words at first. I stared at the paper, watching my sister's name printed in clear black font on a property transfer agreement dated June 15th. The house I've been paying for? The house I send $1,400 a month for? It belongs to Victoria now? George. That's impossible, I said. I would have known. The mortgage payments. Daniel's voice was gentle but firm. Hannah, the money you sent your parents over the last 5 years, totaling $72,000. Never went to the bank, your parents kept it. 6 months ago, Victoria refinanced the home in her name and paid off the remaining balance. I sat frozen, taking in what he was telling me. George. For 5 years, I believed I was helping my parents keep a roof over their heads. Every month, I transferred $1,400 out of my account, money that could have gone toward my own down payment and my own future. And they lied. They took my money and used it for something else entirely. Here's what I believe happened, Daniel continued. Your parents defaulted on their original mortgage years ago. George. Instead of telling you, they let you believe your payments were keeping them afloat while they diverted the funds elsewhere. When Victoria committed the identity fraud, part of those funds went toward the house. Then, 6 months ago, she refinanced everything under her name, cleared the remaining balance, and took full ownership. He pointed to the documents. George. The June 15th title transfer signed by Richard and Patricia Brooks, a new mortgage approved in Victoria's name, and the collateral verification that used my stolen credit profile to secure the loan approval. The property was currently valued at $680,000. So for 5 years, I thought I was saving my parents' home? Yes, George. And they lied to you the entire time. And now, Victoria owns a house worth nearly $700,000, partially built on my money and my stolen identity. Precisely. I leaned back, letting the weight of it hit me. $84,000 in fraudulent debt. $72,000 in diverted mortgage payments. A house stolen right out from under me while I smiled at family dinners and played with my nieces in the backyard. George, what are my options? Daniel walked me through the paths again, but this time, the stakes were much higher. Criminal charges would mean proceedings against all 3 of them. Victoria as the primary offender facing significant prison time, and my parents as co-conspirators looking at potential liability. George. A civil suit would mean a lengthy court battle, a forced sale of the property, and years of legal proceedings. A hybrid approach would start with clearing my credit through fraud reports while reserving the right to press formal charges later. If I pursue criminal charges, I asked, what happens to my nieces? Daniel paused. They would likely remain with their father, Marcus. George. If he can't care for them, they could enter the protective custody system. Lily and Emma. 7 and 5. They had nothing to do with any of this. They didn't choose their mother, and they didn't ask to be born into a family built on deception. I need time to think, I said. Can we start with the credit bureau reports first? Clear my name without taking the nuclear option just yet. George. Daniel nodded slowly. We can, but Hannah, they don't deserve your mercy. Maybe not. But those two little girls haven't done anything wrong. I drove home in a daze. The Denver streets were bright in the midday sun, filled with holiday reminders. Wreaths on doors, lights wrapped around trees, families walking together with shopping bags. I felt like I was watching it all from a great distance. Porch. Back in my apartment, I sat on the couch and stared at the wall. The evidence folder was still on my coffee table, with Daniel's new documents resting right on top. The title transfer bearing my sister's name. Memories drifted back. Last Christmas, Lily running to the door to greet me, her face glowing. Aunt Hannah, did you bring presents? Of course I did. I always did. Porch. I had picked out art supplies specifically for her because I knew she loved to draw. Emma's birthday in March. She had turned 5. Quiet, introspective, just like I was at that age. While everyone else gave her princess dresses and noisy toys, I gave her an illustrated book about a girl who became an astronaut. She carried it everywhere for months. Porch. Victoria had rolled her eyes, saying she didn't get why Emma was so obsessed with that silly book. Last Thanksgiving, while the adults argued over a football game in the living room, Lily had quietly asked me in the kitchen, Aunt Hannah, why doesn't Mommy like you? I had frozen with a dish towel in my hand. Sweetheart, why would you think that? Porch. Because when you're not here, she talks about you differently, meaner. Those girls knew something was wrong with their family. Even while the adults pretended everything was fine, the kids could tell. And now, their future depended on what I chose to do next. At 1 p.m., the doorbell rang. I had been sitting on the couch without moving for over an hour. Porch. The sound pulled me back, and I forced myself up. Megan Chen was standing in the hallway. She was my best friend and a colleague I'd worked with at the firm for 6 years. She took one look at my face and pushed her way inside. My God, Hannah, what happened? I told her everything. The lawyer meeting, the property transfer, how Victoria ended up owning a house I had helped pay for. Porch. Daniel's documents were spread across my coffee table like evidence at a crime scene. Because they were. Megan listened without interrupting. When I finished, she sat next to me on the couch and took my hand. Okay. Let me make sure I understand this correctly. Your sister stole $84,000 using your name. Your parents helped her do it. They lied about the mortgage for 5 straight years. Porch. Victoria now owns a $700,000 house that you partially funded. And now you're sitting here feeling guilty because of her kids? I pulled my hand back. They're innocent, Megan. Lily and Emma didn't do anything. Megan turned to face me directly. Hannah, listen to me. They are using those children as human shields. That isn't love. It's manipulation. Porch. Victoria committed severe financial crimes, and now she's hiding behind her daughters to avoid consequences. That guilt isn't yours to carry. It's hers. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. Another text from my mother. Victoria told me about your accusations. I am shocked at you, Hannah. We are a family. How could you believe such lies about us? Porch. Followed immediately by another. Think about the children. Think about what you're doing to this family. You aren't the Hannah we raised. You've changed. Then one more. I talked to Pastor Williams. He agrees that forgiveness is the only way forward. Whatever grievances you think you have, we can work through them as a family. But not like this. Not with lawyers and threats. Porch. Megan read over my shoulder. Bringing out the pastor, classic guilt trip. Notice how she doesn't actually deny anything? She just talks about forgiveness and grievances. She knows, Hannah. She knew from the start. I stared at my mother's words. She was right about one thing. I had changed. Porch. I was no longer the Hannah who apologized for taking up space. Nor was I the Hannah who took the fall for other people's choices. They'll never admit it, I said. Not to me, not to anyone. In their minds, they're the victims, and I'm just an ungrateful, troublemaking daughter. So what are you going to do? I don't know yet. But I'm done feeling guilty for choices I didn't make. George. At 3:45 p.m., my phone rang. The caller ID made me freeze. Dad. My father hadn't called me directly in nearly 3 years. Everything was always relayed through my mother. Always. That's unusual, Megan said. He never calls you directly. Maybe you should answer and see what new tactic they're trying. I picked up. Dad? His voice wasn't what I expected. No anger, no pleading, just exhaustion. George. Hannah, we need to talk in person. I don't think that's a good idea right now. Please, just hear me out. There are things you don't know. I know enough, Dad. A long pause followed. When he spoke again, his voice trembled slightly. Not everything. Not the most important part. Come to the house tomorrow. Noon. Just give us a chance to explain. Your mother doesn't know I'm calling. George, this is between you and me, father to daughter. I looked at Megan. She shrugged and mouthed, your call. All right, tomorrow at noon. Thank you, Hannah. I don't deserve it, but thank you. I hung up and sat in the quiet apartment. Father to daughter. He had never said that to me in my life. You think it's a trap? Megan asked. With this family? Always. George. But if there's something I don't know, something that changes everything, I need to hear it, even if it hurts. I didn't trust my father. I didn't trust any of them anymore. But that tired, broken, almost desperate tone on the phone was something I had never heard from Richard Brooks before. For the first time in my life, he sounded like a man who had nothing left to lose. George. And that scared me more than anything else. The drive to Boulder felt longer than usual. I took US 36 through the foothills, looking at the snow-capped Rockies ahead, trying to mentally prepare for whatever was coming. The evidence folder sat on my passenger seat, even thicker than the day before, filled with documents that could tear a family apart. Every radio station was playing holiday music. George. I turned it off and drove in silence. At noon, I turned onto Pinewood Drive. The neighborhood looked like a postcard. Snow-covered lawns, wreaths on every door, Christmas lights waiting to turn on at dark. My parents' house sat at the end of the cul-de-sac. The house I sent $72,000 to protect. The house that now belonged to my sister. George. There were 2 cars in the driveway. My parents' Buick and Victoria's white SUV. Parked along the curb was a third car I didn't recognize. A silver BMW. I parked on the street, leaving the driveway clear. I wanted an unobstructed exit strategy, just in case. Now that I knew the truth, the house looked completely different. George. It was no longer a home. It was a crime scene covered in festive decorations. I grabbed the folder, walked up to the front door, and rang the bell like a stranger. Victoria answered. She was wearing casual clothes, her eyes red from crying, or pretending to cry. Behind her, I could see the living room arranged like an intervention. My father Richard sat on the main couch next to my mother Patricia. George. Victoria's husband Marcus stood near the window, looking more uncomfortable than I'd ever seen him. Holiday decorations filled every corner, a tree loaded with ornaments, a garland over the fireplace, and a row of hanging stockings. I did a quick mental count, 4 stockings. Richard, Patricia, Victoria, Marcus. No stocking with my name on it. Hannah, my mother said, standing up from the couch. George. Thank God you're here. Please, sit. I'll stand. Of course you will, Victoria muttered behind me. My father's voice cut through the room, sharper than I'd ever heard him speak to Victoria. Victoria, that's enough. Everyone fell silent. I stood by the door, holding the folder tightly against my chest like a shield, waiting. Richard cleared his throat. George. Hannah, we asked you here because this family is falling apart. Your mother and I talked about this all night. He looked over at Patricia, who was dabbing at the corners of her eyes with a tissue. We made mistakes, we see that now. My mother picked up right on cue, her voice dripping with rehearsed emotion. We should have told you about the mortgage, about the house. George. But you have to understand, we were backed into a corner. Your father's business ran into trouble, and we were on the verge of losing everything. Richard nodded in agreement. When Victoria offered to help refinance, it felt like our only way out, Patricia said, reaching a hand toward me, though I didn't step any closer. We didn't want to burden you with our problems. George, you were already doing so much. I let their words hang in the heavy air for a moment before speaking. You didn't want to burden me? I sent you $2,400 every single month for 5 years. That's $72,000. I thought that money was keeping a roof over your heads. Where did it actually go? Dead silence filled the room. Where did my money go, Mom? George. Patricia looked over at Richard while Richard stared fixedly at the floorboards. Victoria shifted uncomfortably in her armchair. Finally, my father spoke up. Bills, credit cards, and a portion of it went toward helping Victoria with her expenses. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because of the sheer absurdity of it all. George. So, I was bankrolling Victoria's lifestyle while she was simultaneously using my identity to pull out even more funds? That's not a mistake. That's a coordinated scheme. Victoria suddenly snapped from her chair. Oh, here we go again. Saint Hannah, the ultimate martyr. You act like you've suffered so much. You have a great job, a nice apartment, and no kids to worry about. George, do you have any idea what it's like to try and raise 2 children while Marcus's business was struggling? Do you have any concept at all? Marcus turned away from the window, a look of utter confusion on his face. Wait. What do you mean? My business struggling. Victoria froze instantly. My business never struggled, Marcus continued, looking back and forth between us. George, we had one tough quarter 2 years ago, but we made it through. He turned his eyes to me. What is she talking about? What identity theft? I watched Victoria's face drain of all color. She hadn't told him. Her own husband had been completely kept in the dark about everything she had done. He was living in a house built on fraud without having a clue. I could have shielded her. George. I could have played along to keep up appearances like I used to. But I didn't. I opened my evidence folder. Marcus, I think you need to take a look at this. I handed him the loan documents, the credit reports, and the forged signatures. He took them slowly, almost hesitant to see what was written inside. The only sound in the room was the crisp rustling of paper as he flipped through the pages. George. With every page Marcus read, his complexion turned a paler shade of white. When he reached the end, he looked up at Victoria. What is this? Victoria's voice started to tremble. Marcus, I can explain. A $47,000 loan in her name? He said, holding up the application. You told me the down payment for our house was an inheritance from your grandmother. Victoria stayed completely silent. George. There was no inheritance, was there? Her silence was the only answer he needed. Marcus set the documents down on the coffee table, his hands shaking noticeably. This house, our house in Boulder. You told me your parents sold their old car and added some savings to give us the down payment as a gift. They did help, Victoria tried to argue. George. But the rest of it was stolen money taken by using your sister's identity. He looked over at me. How much total? This specific loan was $47,000. $15,000 of it went straight toward that down payment. Marcus stared at the Christmas tree for a long time. We're living in a house bought with fraud. Victoria broke down, crying genuine, desperate tears this time. I was going to pay it back. George. I was planning on fixing all of it. Marcus' voice sounded entirely hollow. When? When were you ever planning to tell me that our entire life was built on a lie? He stood up, surveyed the room, looked at every single one of us, and walked toward the door. I need some air, I need to think. He walked out without looking back. George. The front door closed behind him with a quiet click, but it echoed louder than a slam. Victoria collapsed into her chair, burying her face in her hands. My mother immediately rushed over to comfort her. Sweetheart, it's going to be okay. We'll fix this. Not a single word was spoken to me, not even a glance. George. Even now, with the truth laid bare, Patricia's immediate instinct was still to comfort the daughter who had systematically stolen from me. I watched them, seeing the pattern play out so clearly. This was the absolute last time. 5 years, I said. $72,000. And not a single one of you thought I deserved to know the truth. My mother looked up, her expression turning defensive. George. We were trying to protect you. Protect me from what? Protect me from knowing my own family was stealing my money? That wasn't stealing, that was borrowing. Borrowing requires consent and repayment. I gave no consent and I received no repayment. My father finally spoke, his voice weak and laden with defeat. Hannah, I'm sorry. I know it doesn't change anything, but I am truly sorry. George, your mother and I got in over our heads. Instead of asking for help the right way, we took shortcuts. It was wrong. I was wrong. Patricia glared at him sharply. Richard, stop it, Patricia, enough. This is what we did, and we need to own up to it. I gathered my folder and headed for the door. Victoria looked up from her mother's shoulder. Hannah! Wait! I kept moving. George. My mother's voice chased after me. Look at what you've done. You've ruined your sister's marriage. I paused right at the doorway. No, Mom. Victoria ruined her marriage the moment she forged my signature. I just handed Marcus the match. I reached for the door handle when Patricia's voice cut through the room once more. Hannah, wait a second. There's one more thing you need to know. George. I stopped, but I didn't turn around. This house, Victoria's house, it's not just in her name. Your father signed the refinancing agreement as a co-signer. If you take legal action against Victoria, you will destroy him too. His pension, his credit, everything he has. Is that really what you want? To send your own father into financial ruin? George. I turned round slowly, looking at my mother, and then at my father. He couldn't meet my eyes. My attorney will be contacting you after Christmas. I opened the door and stepped out into the crisp December air. The snow had begun falling again, soft and silent. Behind me, I could hear Victoria sobbing, my mother offering quiet reassurances, and my father saying nothing at all. George. I got into my car and drove away from the house I had helped pay for, away from the family I had helped support, and away from the lies I had helped maintain with my silence. They had weaponized my father, turning him into a human shield. If I pursued justice, I would bring him down too. They calculated that my remaining love for him would force me to back off. George. 3 months ago, that tactic might have worked. But that was before I realized what they were capable of, before I understood that their love was always conditional, always transactional, and always a trap. As I drove back to Denver with snowflakes hitting the windshield, one thought repeated continuously in my mind. George. No matter what happens next, I am no longer the silent pillar holding up this family. It's time they see what happens when that pillar steps away. The drive back to Denver felt like moving through water. Everything felt slow, heavy, and surreal. George. The Rocky Mountains stretched out ahead, indifferent to the chaos unfolding in my life, while I gripped the steering wheel so tightly, my knuckles turned white. The evidence folder sat on the passenger seat, even thicker than when I first arrived at my parents' house. But the weight I felt had nothing to do with paper. George. My mother's words kept ringing in my mind. Your father signed the refinancing agreement as a co-signer. If you take legal action against Victoria, you will destroy him too. They had weaponized my father, turning him into a human shield. The moment I discovered the fraud, they had already set up a safety valve. George. Richard Brooks, 64 years old, with his pension and credit tied directly to Victoria's house. If I sought justice, I would drag him down with her. They were counting on whatever love I had left for him to force my hand to stop. My phone rang through the car's Bluetooth system. It was Daniel Reyes. I was just about to call you, I said. George. How did the meeting go? I let out a laugh, though there was zero humor in it. About as well as expected. Actually, worse. I laid out everything for him. Marcus storming out after finding out the truth, Victoria's tears, and the sight of my mother immediately rushing to comfort her. Finally, I brought up the fact that my father was a co-signer on the refinancing. George. Daniel listened quietly without interrupting. That definitely complicates things, he noted after I finished. But it doesn't change the underlying fundamentals. It changes everything if pursuing this means I destroy my father in the process. Your father made his choices, Hannah. He signed documents he knew were connected to fraudulent activity. George. He isn't a bystander here. He's an active participant. He's still my father. And Victoria is still your sister, but that didn't stop her, did it? I was rendered speechless. He was right, and we both knew it. There's one more thing, Daniel continued. I discovered additional documentation regarding that refinancing. George. There were irregularities when Victoria took over the mortgage. What kind of irregularities? The kind that can cause the entire structure to collapse. But before I say more, I need to verify a few details. Can you come by my office tomorrow morning? I know it's Christmas Eve, but this can't wait. I told him I'd be there at 8 a.m. and hung up the phone. The snow was falling harder now. George. I turned on the windshield wipers, watching them sweep back and forth across the glass. Whatever Daniel had uncovered was serious enough to warrant a meeting on Christmas Eve, which told me one thing. Things were about to get much worse. By 3:30 p.m., I was back home. My apartment felt different somehow. Smaller, quieter. George. I tossed the evidence folder onto the kitchen counter and stood in the stillness, taking a deep breath. Holiday lights from the building across the street cast colorful reflections through the window, and I could hear music drifting from somewhere in the distance. My mind drifted to my father, Richard Brooks. George. The man who taught me how to ride a bike when I was 6. The man who stayed up late helping me with my high school math homework. The man who cried at my college graduation, the only time I had ever seen him lose composure. That was the father in my memories. The father I wanted to believe still existed somewhere beneath it all. George. Not the man who signed fraudulent documents and stood by while his wife helped orchestrate the theft of their daughter's identity. When did he become this person? When did he decide that protecting Victoria's lifestyle was worth sacrificing my future? Or had he always been this way, and I was just too desperate for his approval to see it clearly? At 5 p.m., my phone rang. It was Victoria. George. I could have ignored it, but something pushed me to answer. Maybe it was curiosity, maybe a need for closure, or maybe just sheer self-punishment. Hannah, please don't hang up. Her voice was completely broken, raspy from crying. All the polish and confidence had been stripped away entirely. I said nothing, just waited. Marcus won't take my calls. He took Lily and Emma to his mother's house. George. They won't even let me speak to my girls. This is the absolute worst day of my life. What do you want, Victoria? I want to fix this. I want to make things right. Tell me what I have to do. Tell me what you want. I want the last 10 years back. Can you give me that? Silence. Can you give me back my credit score? The down payment for the home I wanted to buy? My trust in this family? George. Hannah, please. I want a sister who wouldn't steal from me in the first place. Can you give me that? A longer silence followed. Then, very softly, she said something I never expected to hear. I was jealous of you. I waited for her to go on. I was always jealous of you. You were smarter, more capable, and you didn't need anyone. George. Mom and Dad gave me everything because I was always demanding it, but they respected you. I saw the way Dad looked at you when you passed your CPA exams. It was like you were the child he was actually proud of. I just wanted to win for once. I processed her words carefully. George. This sister who had everything, who was showered with praise, who got a $40,000 wedding and a fully funded college education, was jealous of me? The irony was profoundly absurd. You didn't want to win, Victoria. You wanted me to lose. You used Mom and Dad to make it happen. That's not jealousy. That's cruelty. I didn't mean for it to get this far. That loan was supposed to be temporary. George. I planned on paying it back before you ever found out. You opened 3 accounts over 2 years. That wasn't temporary, that was systematic. I got in deeper than I planned. Every time I thought I could get clear, something else came up. Marcus's business ran into a tough spot. The girls needed things. The house needed repairs. So every time you needed money, instead of asking me, you just took it. If I asked, it meant admitting I wasn't doing as well as you. Do you know what it felt like living in your shadow? Perfect Hannah with her perfect job and perfect credit. I couldn't let you see me fail. So you stole from me instead. And when I couldn't get a mortgage for my own home, you let me blame myself. Arch. Victoria, you made me pay for your choices. Victoria started crying again. If you press charges, I'll lose everything. My house, maybe even my kids. Do you really want to see your nieces lose their mother? I want you to understand one thing, Victoria. From the moment you forged my signature, you made your choice. Every single consequence that follows comes from that choice, not from me. Arch. I hung up and set the phone on the coffee table, feeling completely drained and empty inside. Victoria's confession should have brought some sense of satisfaction, but it only made the situation feel more tragic. My sister had spent her life competing for a prize I didn't even know existed, and in the end, to win it, she destroyed us both. At 6:30 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text from my father. Arch. Hannah, I need to tell you something. Your mother doesn't know I'm writing this. A second message followed, I want you to know the truth. All of it. A third message, the situation with the house is much more complicated than Patricia told you. A fourth, I signed as a co-signer for a reason. It wasn't to protect Victoria, it was to protect you. A fifth, please, let me explain. Arch. Not in front of your mother, just the two of us. I stared at those words. To protect you. Nothing about this nightmare was meant to protect me. Every piece of it was designed to extract something from me. Yet those words lodged in my chest, I replied. Tomorrow, after I meet with my lawyer, we can talk. His reply jumped back instantly. Thank you, Hannah. I don't deserve it, but thank you. Arch. I made dinner that night, though I couldn't taste a thing. Just heated up a can of soup. Something simple. My mind was racing, turning over everything that had happened and everything yet to come. Tomorrow brought two conversations. An 8 a.m. meeting with Daniel, followed by my father. Two opportunities to uncover a truth that could change everything. Arch. Around 8 p.m., Megan texted. Any updates from the family circus? I told her about Victoria's call, the jealousy confession, and how she played the kids card again. Classic move, Megan replied. What about your parents? Dad says there's more to the story. Claims he was trying to protect me. Protect you? That's a new angle. I don't buy it, but I'd listen to what he has to say. Arch. Want me to come with you tomorrow? No, this is something I have to handle on my own. Before going to bed, I opened my laptop. Ever since Daniel mentioned irregularities in the refinancing, one thought kept bugging me. I searched the Boulder County property records and pulled up the public database. I typed in the Pinewood Drive address and waited for the results to load. The record appeared. Arch. Property owner, Victoria M. Callahan. I scrolled down to the mortgage details. Lender, First Mountain Bank. Original loan date, June 15th. Then I saw something that made my blood run cold. Under additional encumbrances, there was a second lien listed. Lien holder, Internal Revenue Service, IRS. Amount, $89,000. Status, active. The IRS had placed an $89,000 tax lien on the house. Arch. Based on the filing date, this debt had been attached to the property before Victoria took over the title. That meant one thing. This was someone else's tax debt, attached straight to the property. I sat in my dark apartment, the laptop screen glowing in front of me, realizing with terrifying clarity what had actually happened. Arch. Mom and Dad hadn't transferred the house just to escape their mortgage problems. They transferred the house to evade the IRS. And Victoria had unknowingly inherited a ticking time bomb. My sister wasn't just a perpetrator, she was a victim too. And the people who had victimized her were the exact same people who had victimized me, our parents. I barely slept that night. Arch. The discovery of the IRS lien played on repeat in my head. I spent half the night researching tax liens and property transfer laws. When my alarm went off at 6:30 a.m. on December 24th, I had a clearer understanding of what my parents had done. But I needed Daniel to verify it. Christmas Eve morning in Denver was quiet. Fresh snow had fallen overnight, making the city look ironically peaceful. Arch. I brewed some coffee, printed everything I had found the night before, and added it to my evidence folder. The stack of papers was nearly 2 inches thick now, Enough documentation to dismantle a family. At 8:15 a.m., I arrived at Daniel's office. He was already there with a cup of coffee, papers spread out across his desk. The expression on his face when I walked in told me everything. Whatever he had uncovered was extremely serious. Before we discuss next steps, I need to show you what I found last night. I placed my printed sheets on his desk. An IRS lien on the property, $89,000. Daniel gave a grim nod. I know, I found the exact same thing. But it goes deeper than that. He gestured for me to sit and pulled out a folder I hadn't seen before. Let's start from the beginning, your parents' house. The original mortgage was taken out in 2008 for $320,000. By 2019, they had paid it down to about $210,000. That's when things went off the rails. I folded my hands in my lap and waited. Your father's business failed in 2018, leaving him with back taxes. Instead of working out a payment plan with the IRS, he ignored it. In 2020, the IRS filed an $89,000 lien against the property. Your parents never told you because they were ashamed, and because you were already making payments toward what you thought was their mortgage. I closed my eyes, processing the reality. So the money I sent every month never went to the bank. Exactly. They used it to cover living expenses, credit cards, and to subsidize Victoria. The mortgage fell behind, but they kept taking your money and pretending everything was fine. And the transfer to Victoria? Daniel leaned forward. When Victoria offered to refinance, your parents saw an exit strategy. They transferred the property to her, assuming it would clear the IRS lien. He paused. It didn't. A federal tax lien stays attached to the property even after a transfer. Victoria now owns a house encumbered by nearly $300,000 in combined debt, her own mortgage, plus an IRS lien she unknowingly inherited. She didn't know about the back taxes, I said. Daniel shook his head. Based on these documents, I don't believe she did. Your parents dumped their problem onto her while making her feel like she was doing them a favor. I sat in silence for a moment. Victoria had committed fraud against me. She had stolen my identity and used it to fund a lifestyle she couldn't afford. But she had also been manipulated by our parents, handed a house with an $89,000 anchor attached to it. There's one more thing, Daniel continued, pulling out another document, the original 2008 mortgage agreement. A standard clause found in almost every mortgage, a due on sale provision. I had read about this during my research the night before, but I wanted to hear his breakdown. When your parents transferred the house to Victoria, they triggered this clause. It requires the original borrowers to notify the lender of any change in ownership. If they fail to do so, the bank can demand immediate payment of the entire remaining loan balance. Did they notify the bank? No, they hid the transfer. The bank has no idea Victoria owns the property now. Payments are still drawn from an account in your parents' name, funded by Victoria's refinancing money. It's a shell game. If the bank discovers this unauthorized transfer, they can demand full payment immediately. $215,000 due on the spot. Combined with the $89,000 IRS lien, the total exposure exceeds $300,000. I ran the numbers in my head. Who can notify the bank about the transfer? I asked. Daniel paused. Anyone with knowledge of it, including you, since you were making payments on the account you assumed was the mortgage you have standing. So if I informed the bank about the unauthorized transfer, I said slowly, the bank could foreclose and Victoria would lose the house. Yes. Your parents would be liable for any remaining balance after foreclosure, and the IRS would still pursue its lien against anyone holding assets. It would completely ruin all of them financially. Yes. Victoria would lose everything. Your parents' retirement would be wiped out, and given the fraud involved in the initial transfer, they could potentially face criminal exposure. I stared at the documents laid out across Daniel's desk. 3 months ago, I discovered my sister had stolen $84,000 using my name. Now, I held evidence of a scheme far deeper than I ever imagined. Tax evasion, mortgage fraud, and a due-on-sale violation that handed me a nuclear option. I don't want to destroy them, I said finally. I just want back what's mine. Daniel nodded. Orch. Then we use this as leverage, not a weapon. We draft a formal letter outlining everything you know and the actions you're prepared to take. Before you press the nuclear button, we give them one chance to make things right. He opened his laptop. What do you want, Hannah? Be specific. Orch. I thought it over for a moment, then spoke. I want the $84,000 in fraudulent debt completely removed from my name. I want the $72,000 I paid toward the mortgage reimbursed. I want a formal, written statement acknowledging what they did. And I want them removed from my financial life forever. Daniel typed as I spoke. We'll structure this into a formal, binding legal document. Orch. Over the next hour, the letter took shape. Paragraph by paragraph, Daniel detailed the full record. The identity theft with specific dates and amounts, the mortgage fraud and where my money actually went, the due-on-sale violation and its legal ramifications, the IRS lien and who held ultimate responsibility. Finally, came my terms. Total removal of my name from all fraudulent accounts, reimbursement of the $72,000 mortgage contributions, a written admission of wrongdoing, and zero further contact regarding financial matters. The deadline, December 31st. If they failed to comply, I would inform First Mountain Bank of the unauthorized transfer, file formal fraud charges, and pursue civil damages. Daniel printed 3 copies of the letter, one for Victoria, one for my parents, and one for our records. How do you want to deliver this? He asked. Certified mail will take a few days. I'm delivering it in person today. He raised an eyebrow. On Christmas Eve? They wanted a family Christmas. They're getting one. I gathered the documents and stood up. He walked me to the door. Orch. After you deliver the letter, you're meeting your father alone, he said. He claims he was trying to protect you. Are you sure that's wise? He says there's more to the story. I need to know if there's anything left worth saving. If not, at least I'll know I gave him the chance to tell the truth. I drove toward Boulder with the evidence package sitting on the passenger seat. Inevitably, every radio station was playing Christmas music. I didn't turn it off. I let Silent Night fill the car as I drove toward the final confrontation. Near Broomfield, my phone rang. It was Victoria, I answered. Hannah, don't come here. I'm already on my way. Something happened. Her voice sounded different. No crying, no begging, just sheer terror. Marcus called. He found the IRS documents in my filing cabinet. He's talking about hiring a lawyer, filing fraud charges, and taking the girls away permanently. Hannah, please, whatever you're planning to do, I'm going to lose everything. I pulled over at a rest stop. Victoria, I didn't do this to you. What? The $89,000 IRS lien? It's theirs, Mom and Dad's. Now it's yours. You didn't just buy their house, you bought their debt. Silence fell over the line. Then, very softly, what? That $89,000 IRS lien was attached to the property in 2020, long before you took over ownership. Federal tax liens stay attached through property transfers. When Mom and Dad transferred the house to your name, that debt came along with it. Another long silence followed. They told me the title was clean. They swore it was. They lied to both of us. The only difference is I found out first. A sound came through the phone, a mix of a laugh and a sob. Victoria, I'm coming over to deliver something. A formal letter from my lawyer detailing everything I know and the actions I'm prepared to take. You have until December 31st to respond. But before you make any decisions, you should know one thing. Dad wants to meet me alone. He claims there's more to the story, and I'm giving him one chance to tell the truth. Hannah, wait. I hung up, sitting in the idling car as snow fell onto the windshield. In 2 hours, I would face my father with the evidence of his betrayal. In 2 hours, I would find out if he had ever told me a single truthful word. But first, I had a letter to deliver. Merry Christmas, Victoria. At 2 p.m., I pulled onto Pinewood Drive. The neighborhood looked picture perfect, with snow-covered yards, wreaths on doors, and Christmas lights waiting for dark. Victoria's white SUV sat alone in the driveway. My parents' Buick was nowhere to be seen. Porch. Knowing the truth now, the house looked entirely different. It wasn't a home. It was a crime scene dressed up in holiday decor, $680,000 on paper, with $300,000 in debt hidden underneath. And inside, my sister was waiting to learn that the life she stole was built on shifting sand. Porch. I parked on the street, grabbed the evidence folder from the passenger seat, and made sure Daniel's letter was sitting right on top. With its official law firm letterhead, it looked cold, formal, and utterly final. I walked up to the front door and pressed the doorbell. Porch. It took a long time for Victoria to answer, and when she finally opened the door, she looked even worse than she had sounded over the phone. No makeup, unwashed hair, eyes swollen and bloodshot from crying. At 2 o'clock on Christmas Eve, she was still wearing pajamas. Porch. Through the doorway, I could see the house was a complete disaster. Toys scattered across the floor, dishes piled high in the sink, and the lights on the Christmas tree turned completely off. Hannah, I didn't think you'd actually show up. I told you I would. I held out the envelope. This is from my attorney. Her hands trembled as she took it. What is this? Everything. Porch. The identity theft, the mortgage fraud, the IRS lien, and every single legal step I'm prepared to take if we don't reach an agreement. Hannah, please. Can't we just talk? Just us, without lawyers, We're way past that, Victoria. Read the letter. You have until December 31st to respond. Her face crumpled. The girls aren't here. Marcus took them to his mother's house. Porch. He said he's filing for divorce and seeking sole custody. I might lose my kids, Hannah. Does that mean anything to you at all? It means everything to me. That's why I'm giving you a chance to make things right before it gets even worse. Read the letter, and then we'll talk. She clutched the envelope against her chest as if it could physically shield her from what was written inside. Porch. Where are you going to see Dad? He said he had something to tell me. Victoria's expression shifted subtly. Fear, confusion, and something else I couldn't quite name. Hannah, wait. Whatever he tells you, it's more complicated than you think. Just be careful. Dad isn't the only one who kept secrets. I stared at her face for a moment, searching for the familiar signs of manipulation. Porch. But all I saw was sheer exhaustion and something that almost looked like genuine concern. I left her standing in the doorway and drove straight to downtown Boulder. The coffee shop was called Mountain Brew, a quiet spot on Pearl Street that was only half full on Christmas Eve. My father was sitting in a corner booth, staring at an untouched cup of coffee. Porch. He looked 10 years older than he had just 2 days ago. Graying stubble covered his jaw, and his clothes were rumpled, looking like he had slept in them. His eyes darted around nervously. I slid into the booth across from him. I didn't order anything. I set my evidence folder on the table between us like a physical barricade. Thanks for coming, he began, his voice raspy. Porch. I didn't think you'd show. You said you had something to tell me, something about protecting me. He nodded slowly. I do, but first, I need you to understand something. Everything I did, every mistake, every lie. I thought I was doing the right thing. For who? For the first time in my life, he met my gaze directly. For you, Hannah. It was always for you. Porch. I didn't believe him, but I stayed quiet and let him explain. When my business failed in 2018, your mother blamed me. She said I ruined everything. She wanted to go straight to you and ask for money. A huge amount. $50,000 to clear our debts and start over. I remained silent, listening. I refused. You had already given us so much over the years, and asking for more felt deeply wrong. Porch. That's when she came up with the mortgage scheme. She set it up so you think you were helping us keep the house, but the money went elsewhere. I should have stopped her, but I didn't. And the identity theft? Richard's face twisted in shame. When Victoria needed money for her down payment, Patricia saw an opportunity. She convinced Victoria to use your information. Porch. She swore to Victoria that you'd never find out. Victoria didn't want to do it at first. She knew it was wrong. But your mother always had a way of making terrible things sound reasonable, even necessary. So you're pinning everything Victoria did on Mom? I'm giving you the facts. Your mother orchestrated most of it. Victoria was the instrument and I was the accomplice. He took a shaky breath. George. But I tried to protect you as best as I could. How? By letting them steal from me. When they transferred the house to Victoria, Patricia wanted to attach your name to the IRS debt too. She wanted you as a co-signer on the refinancing. I refused. I told her if she tried to put your name on that tax liability, I would tell you everything. George. That's why I became the co-signer instead. To keep your name off that tax debt. I knew it would ruin me financially if it all blew up, but at least it wouldn't ruin you. I stared at him. That's what you call protection? Taking on debt you couldn't pay while standing by as they stole my identity? It was the only line I was strong enough to draw, Hannah. And I drew it. I sat in heavy silence. George. My father, the man I had looked up to my entire life, had been reduced to drawing lines in the sand while watching his wife and daughter commit fraud. It was pathetic, but it was also entirely plausible. So Mom was the mastermind, Victoria was the pawn, and what were you? A guilty bystander? I was a coward. George. A coward who cared more about keeping peace with his wife than doing what was right. He looked down at his untouched coffee. I spent 40 years letting your mother control this family, making excuses, turning a blind eye. By the time I realized how bad things had gotten, I was in too deep to pull myself out. And the favoritism? Victoria always being the golden child. Richard sighed softly. George. That was Patricia, too. Victoria reminded her of herself, needing to be the center of attention, needing constant praise. But you were like me, quiet, capable, self-sufficient. Your mother didn't know what to do with a daughter who didn't need her. So she decided you didn't need anyone, and she raised Victoria to believe the exact same thing. Something inside me shifted. George. It wasn't forgiveness. Far from it, but it was understanding. My mother had shaped this family like clay, molding each of us into the roles she wanted us to play. Victoria was the star, I was the resource, and Richard was the enabler. None of us had been strong enough to break the cycle. I should have protected you, Hannah. Richard's voice cracked. Truly protected you. George. Not just from your mother's schemes, but from your mother herself. For 34 of your years, I failed you every single day. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I needed you to know the truth. All of it, even the parts that destroy whatever image you had left of me. I looked across the table at my father. The man who taught me to ride a bike. The man who cried at my graduation. George. The man who stood by and watched while his wife turned me into a cash machine. Do you want me to say it's okay? That understanding the reasons makes it better? No. I just wanted you to know that I see what I did. What all of us did. Seeing it doesn't undo it. I know. And it doesn't change what happens next. The letter you gave, Victoria. Those demands are real. I know. Can you meet them? George. The money, the written admission, all of it? I don't know. Patricia controls the finances, she always has. But I will try. Whatever it takes, I will try. Then try. Because December 31st isn't a suggestion, it's a deadline. He nodded, tears welling in his eyes. I don't know if I can ever forgive you, Dad, but I'm glad you finally told me the truth. That's already more than I deserve. George. I gathered my folder and stood up. But before I could take a step, my phone rang. Victoria, I answered. Hannah, it's Mom. What happened to her? She found out Dad went to meet you, she found the letter. She started screaming, saying Dad betrayed her and that you ruined everything. And then, she collapsed. She stopped responding. We called 911. They're taking her to Boulder Medical Center. George. My heart skipped a beat. Is she breathing? Yes, but it's weak. They think it's a heart issue or a stroke, I don't know. Hannah, please, whatever you think of us, she's still our mother. Please come. I looked down at my father. His face had turned completely ghost white. He had heard everything over the phone. I'm on my way. I drove toward the hospital, my mind completely numb. George. I didn't know if my mother was going to make it, and I didn't even know which outcome I wanted. I hated myself for not having a clear answer. But one thing was certain. No matter what happened next, nothing was ever going back to the way it was. The Brooks family was shattered beyond repair, and I wasn't sure any of us had enough pieces left to put it back together. Porch. Boulder Medical Center sat on the edge of town, its windows glowing against the dimming Christmas Eve sky. At 5:15 p.m., I rushed through the automatic doors, met immediately by the sharp smell of antiseptic and fear. The lobby was decorated for the holidays with a small Christmas tree near the desk and metallic tinsel flickering under the harsh lights. The contrast felt surreal. I found the desk. Porch. Patricia Brooks. She was brought in by ambulance. The nurse checked her screen. Room 412, fourth floor. The family's is already up there. I rode the elevator alone, watching the numbers climb. 2, 3, 4. The doors opened onto a quiet hallway. Victoria was waiting right near the elevator, her face streaked with tears. "She's stable," Victoria said quickly before I could ask. Porch. It wasn't a heart attack. The doctor said it was a severe panic attack that triggered an arrhythmia from the stress. They're keeping her overnight for observation. "Where's Dad?" "In there with her. She won't let him leave." Victoria led me to a small waiting area with uncomfortable chairs and a muted TV playing a Christmas movie. Porch. We sat on opposite sides of the room, the distance between us feeling both necessary and absurd. "I read the letter," Victoria said after a long silence. "Every word of it. The IRS lien, the due on sale clause, everything." I said nothing, just waited. "You could have destroyed us. One phone call to the bank, and every single one of us would have been ruined." "Yes. Why didn't you?" Porch. "Because I wanted to give everyone a chance to fix things first." Victoria stared at the floor. "Mom and Dad passed their tax debt to me. They told me the house was clear, told me I was helping them by taking it over. I was so desperate to be the responsible one, the one who saved the family. And the whole time, they were setting me up to take the fall." Her voice trembled. "Porch. I wasn't the only one they used, was I?" "No, you weren't." Something shifted in the air between us. Not forgiveness, not even understanding, but a shared recognition. Two daughters, both used as tools in their mother's maneuvers. My father appeared in the doorway. He looked hollowed out, like a man whose foundation had completely caved in. His eyes were bloodshot and his hands were trembling. "Porch. She's awake," he said. "The doctor said she can have visitors, but she's weak. They don't want her stressed." He looked at me. "She asked to see you." Victoria's tone turned sharp. "What about me?" Richard's hesitation said everything. "She asked for Hannah first." Victoria let out a bitter laugh. "Of course she did. Even now, lying in a hospital bed, she's still playing favorites. Porch. Just in a different way." She stood up abruptly. "I need some air. I'll be outside." She walked away without looking back. Richard reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. "Hannah, before you go in, I need to give you this. I've been carrying it around since yesterday, waiting for the right moment. But there's never going to be a right moment, so here." Porch. I took the envelope, but didn't open it. "It's a start," he said. "It's not everything we owe you, but it's a start. There's also a document inside. Victoria signed it this morning, before all of this happened. She agreed to transfer the house back to us. To your mother and me. We're going to sell it and pay off as much of the debt as we can." "Why would Victoria agree to that?" Porch. "Because Marcus is leaving her. Without him, she can't afford the payments anyway. And because I told her it was the only way to keep you from pressing charges." I opened the envelope. Inside was a cashier's check for $50,000, a signed property transfer agreement, and a note written in my father's shaky handwriting. Porch. "Hannah, this is everything your mother and I can liquidate immediately. Our savings, a few small investments, and a loan against my pension. It isn't enough, I know that. But it's a commitment, the rest. The $72,000 from the mortgage payments and those fraudulent debts, we will help Victoria pay off. I will make monthly payments no matter how long it takes. You deserve more than just money." Porch. You deserve the years, the trust, and the childhood that were taken from you. I can't give those back, but I can give you this. My promise that I will spend the rest of my life trying to fix this mistake. Your father. I stared at the check. $50,000. Almost a third of the total amount taken from me. More than I expected, but far less than what was owed. Orch. This doesn't fix everything, I said quietly. I know. But if you'll let it be a start. I tucked the envelope into my purse and walked toward room 412. The hospital room was small and dimly lit, filled with the gentle rhythmic beeping of heart monitors. The window reflected the evening sky, snow falling steadily outside, while holiday lights flickered on the buildings across the street. Porch. Patricia was propped up in bed, looking smaller than I had ever seen her. The intimidating Patricia Brooks had been reduced to a fragile figure hooked up to tubes and monitors. Her roots were graying. She had always dyed her hair, and it hit me that she was always hiding something. Her eyes were closed when I walked in, but she opened them at the sound of my footsteps. Hannah. Porch, you came. Her voice was faint and raspy. I stopped at the foot of the bed. Victoria called. I wasn't going to come, not after everything. I almost thought you wouldn't. A heavy silence stretched between us, filled with 34 years of unspoken truths. The doctor says I need to avoid stress, she offered a weak, brittle smile. Porch. Apparently, my heart can't handle the consequences of my own choices. I didn't return the smile. Is that supposed to be funny? Her expression fell. No, I suppose it isn't. She closed her eyes for a moment, gathering her strength. Richard told me about your meeting, what he said to you. He told you I orchestrated it all. The mortgage, Victoria using your identity. Was he lying? No. Porch. The acknowledgement lingered in the quiet room. I waited for her excuses, her defenses, the familiar manipulation tactics I knew so well. Instead, she said something completely unexpected. I spent my entire life trying to control everything. People, outcomes, appearances. When your father's business failed, I panicked. Porch. We were going to lose everything, while you had it all. Stability, great credit, a future that didn't depend on anyone. I told myself I was just borrowing a little of your strength. I told myself you could afford it, that you'd never find out. And even if you did, I assumed you'd forgive us. Because that's what you always did, Hannah. You forgave, you compromised, and you kept the peace. Porch. I stood unmoving at the foot of the bed. But this time you didn't. You didn't compromise. When I saw that letter and realized what you could do to us, it felt like my chest completely locked up. I thought I was dying, maybe a part of me wanted to, because the alternative was facing what I'd done, facing what I'd become. Her voice broke into a quiet sob. A mother who stole from her own child. Porch. A mother who encouraged her other daughter to do the exact same thing. What kind of person does that? A person who views people as resources instead of family. Patricia flinched, as if physically struck. Yes, that's exactly what I did. Tears tracked down her face, real tears this time, free of performance or manipulation. Just an elderly woman in a hospital bed facing the ruin she had created. Porch. I'm sorry, Hannah. For that text, for Victoria's cruelty, for all of it. I'm sorry I raised you to feel less important than your sister. I'm sorry I took your money, your trust, and your future. I'm sorry I became the kind of mother you had to protect yourself against. I listened without moving, offering no comfort and reaching for no hands. Porch. Do you know what the worst part is, Mom? I spoke quietly. It wasn't the money or even the fraud. It was that you made me spend my entire life wondering what was wrong with me. Why I couldn't earn your love the way Victoria did, but now I know there was never anything wrong with me. The problem was always with you. A heavy sob escaped her throat. I know. I see that now. Porch. I don't expect your forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I need you to know, you were never less than Victoria. You were always stronger. Always had more to offer. I was just too broken to see it. I stood in the silence that followed, processing her words. It was everything I had once craved. Acknowledgement, an apology, the truth. But it didn't feel triumphant or satisfying. It just felt heavy. Porch. I don't know if I can ever forgive you, any of you, but I'm willing to see if you're genuine. Dad gave me a check for $50,000, and Victoria signed the agreement to transfer the house back. If you follow through on paying off the rest, clear my name, repair my credit, and fix this financial nightmare, then maybe we can discuss what comes next. Torch. But I'm promising nothing, and I won't pretend everything is fine. Patricia gave a weak nod. That's already more than I deserve. Yes, it is. I turned to leave, pausing briefly at the doorway. Merry Christmas, Mom. I didn't wait for a response. Out in the hallway, Victoria was waiting. She hadn't gone outside like she said. She had come back upstairs. Porch. Her expression was set with quiet resolve. I heard everything through the door, and I think it's time we stop letting Mom use us against each other. I looked at her. I have a proposal, Victoria said, something that might actually help us both. Can we talk? Really talk. Not as enemies, but as two sisters who were used by the exact same people. Porch. I looked at her, truly taking her in, no makeup, exhausted, with a raw, uncertain expression. Tomorrow, Christmas morning, come to my apartment alone. No mom, no dad, no lawyers. Just us. I'll be waiting. I walked toward the elevators, the envelope heavy in my purse. Porch. I had entered the hospital expecting a final showdown, but instead found something unexpected. The possibility that my sister and I might finally stand on the same side. Christmas morning arrived quietly. I woke up at 7:30 a.m. without an alarm. The first Christmas in years where I didn't have to rush anywhere. Porch. Outside my window, Denver was completely still, wrapped in the peaceful quiet of a city catching its breath. Fresh snow covered everything, soft and clean, sparkling in the morning light. I brewed coffee slowly and took in the stillness. No demands, no obligations, no performance needed. Just me, the snow, and the quiet of my own home. Porch. For the first time in 34 years, being alone on Christmas felt like a gift rather than a punishment. The check sat on my kitchen counter, $50,000. What my father called a start. As the coffee brewed, I looked at it, thinking about what it represented. Not forgiveness, not a complete resolution, just the first step on a very long road. Porch. 4 days ago, I received a text designed to crush me. We're not doing Christmas with you this year. We don't need you. I hadn't been crushed. Instead, it sparked a reckoning that overturned everything I thought I knew about my family. Now, on Christmas morning, I was alone in my apartment. Not feeling lonely, not feeling abandoned, just quietly present. Porch. For the first time in my life, I felt truly free. Victoria was coming at 10 a.m. I showered and changed into comfortable clothes, leaving the armor behind today. I tidied up the apartment, straightened the couch cushions, and set out coffee and pastries. Nothing fancy. This wasn't a performance. Porch. As I pulled back the curtains to let the morning sun in, I realized Victoria had never been to my apartment before. In 10 years of adulthood, my sister had never once visited my home, never seen the space I built for myself, or the life I created completely independently. This was my space, built with my earnings, my choices, and my independence. Porch. No one had given it to me, and no one could take it away. A knock came at 10:05 a.m. Soft and hesitant, unlike Victoria's usual confident knock. I opened the door to find my sister standing in the hallway, holding a small wrapped box. She looked entirely different without makeup. Her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, wearing jeans and a sweater instead of her usual tailored outfits. Porch. The polished facade had completely stripped away, leaving just a regular person behind. Merry Christmas, Hannah. Merry Christmas. Come on in. Victoria walked inside, looking around. It's nice here. Very cozy. It's mine. That's what matters most. She nodded slowly. Yeah. I'm starting to understand what that means. She held out the box. I brought you something. It's nothing expensive. Porch. I unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a picture frame holding an old photo. Hannah and Victoria, maybe 6 and 10 years old, standing in front of a Christmas tree with our arms around each other. We were smiling genuinely, before things got complicated, before we were turned into rivals. I found it in Mom's old album. Victoria said softly. Porch. From before everything happened, before she started turning us against each other. I wanted you to remember that we weren't always like this. There was a time when I truly loved being your big sister. I stared at the photo, a lump forming in my throat. Two little girls who had no idea what the future held. I remember this day, I murmured. You helped me decorate the tree. Porch. I couldn't reach the high branches, so you lifted me up. I had completely forgotten about that moment until now. We sat on my couch with our coffee, the photo resting on the table like a small bridge connecting the past to the present. I spent all night thinking about what I wanted to say to you, Victoria began. About what I could offer that wasn't money or an apology. Porch. I can't undo what I did. The fraud, the lies, all of it. But I can stop being Mom's weapon, and I can try to be your sister again, if you'll let me. I listened quietly without interrupting. Marcus is moving forward with the divorce. He took the girls to his mother's temporarily until we sort out custody. The house is going back to Mom and Dad so they can sell it and pay off the debts. Porch. I'm going to lose everything I built. Or thought I built. But maybe that's not the worst thing. Maybe I need a fresh start. Maybe we both do. What does that even look like? Being sisters again? I don't know. Getting to know the real you, not the version Mom projected onto us. Accepting that you aren't my rival, you're my family. Porch. Being someone you can call when things go wrong, instead of the person making things worse. I know I haven't earned that trust yet, but I want to try. If you're open to it. I set my coffee cup down and looked at her directly. I don't trust you. Not right now. I know. And I don't know if I can forgive you. That might take years, or it might never happen. I understand. Porch. But I'm willing to see who you are without Mom running the script. That's the only promise I can make, right now. Tears welling in her eyes, Victoria whispered, That's already more than I deserve. Yes, it is. But I'm tired of only giving people what they deserve. I want to give myself a chance at having a real sister. Victoria's phone buzzed. Porch. She glanced at it, her expression softening instantly. It's Lily. She's asking if she can call me. Take it. Victoria walked over to the window, speaking softly to her daughter. Merry Christmas, sweetie. I miss you too, so much. Yeah, Mommy's okay. I'm with Aunt Hannah. She smiled through her tears. She wants to talk to you. She handed the phone over to me. Aunt Hannah. Merry Christmas. Porch. Merry Christmas, Lily. Mom said maybe when things get better, we can all have dinner together, can we? I looked over at Victoria. Maybe. We'll see. I got a telescope for Christmas. Dad says we can look at the stars tonight. That sounds amazing, sweetheart. I love you, Aunt Hannah. Those words hit me with far more force than I expected. I love you too, Lily. Porch. Victoria took the phone back, wiping away a tear. They're the only thing I've ever done right. Then fight for them. Be the mother they deserve, not the kind Mom raised you to be. Victoria left around noon. We didn't hug. It wasn't time for that yet, but the handshake was warm. Thank you for letting me come over. Thank you for listening. Thank you for the photo, Porch, and for remembering how we used to be. Goodbye, Hannah, whenever you are ready. Whenever I'm ready. After she left, I sat on the couch and picked up the photograph. Two little girls standing in front of a Christmas tree, before the favoritism, the manipulation, the money, the lies, and the betrayal. We didn't have to be enemies. Mom made us that way. Porch. But she didn't get to decide who we were anymore. I stood by the window, watching the snow-covered city. Holiday lights continued to flicker on the buildings across the street. Down below, a family walked by together, children showing off their new toys. Today, I wasn't part of that scene, but I wasn't missing anything either. Porch. Victoria's original text was meant to exclude and punish me, but instead it set me free. It freed me from believing I had to buy love, from feeling like I was never enough, and from remaining tied to a family that valued me only for what I could provide. As evening settled in, I sat comfortably in my apartment while the holiday lights cast soft reflections across the walls. Porch. The check remained on the counter and the photo now sat on my bookshelf, both symbols of a life being rewritten. A week ago, I thought the worst thing that could happen was being cut off by my family at Christmas. I was wrong. The worst thing was staying quiet, staying small, and remaining the family emergency fund until I was completely drained. The text meant to break me became the exact permission I needed to break away. My mother remained in the hospital. I didn't call, but my father sent updates, which I read without replying. When I was ready, Victoria and I would talk again. The funds would be repaid, the debts cleared, and my credit restored. More importantly, the cycle was broken. I used to think family meant endless sacrifice until you had nothing left. Now I know real family doesn't keep score or take what isn't theirs. Setting boundaries isn't a betrayal, it's survival, self-respect, and finally choosing yourself. My sister texted me on December 21st saying, "We don't need you." She was right. They didn't need me. But what she didn't realize, and what none of them understood, was that I didn't need them anymore either. And that was the most empowering realization of my life. If you're reading or listening to this story on Christmas or any other day, and you recognize a piece of yourself in it, I want to tell you this. If you've been the one constantly giving while others only take, and if you've ever wondered if saying no makes you the villain, it doesn't. You are allowed to set boundaries. You are allowed to protect yourself. You are allowed to walk away from people who only love what you can do for them. If you've ever compromised your own well-being for family, remember that you did nothing wrong. Your story matters, and you deserve to be valued for who you are, not just what you provide. My name is Hannah Brooks. I'm 34 years old, and this Christmas, I finally learned what it means to be free. Merry Christmas, and may you find your freedom, too.